What's up, everybody? All right. Good to see you guys. As we get started today, I thought I'd discuss a little bit about competition being the central theme of our program. I thought pretty appropriate to talk and honor Pat Fisher's family. And that is a true competitor and a ball hawk. 17 seasons as a 17th round selection. So I thought if you ever want to talk about competing and what it would probably look like, pretty amazing career. But all that said, I'm excited to be back at it with the guys today. I'm glad to get rocking with you guys and get started.
Dan, obviously both teams are going to have to deal with this, but dealing with a quarterback like Lamar, what challenges and how much does it keep defensive coordinators up at night to have to stop a guy like that?
It does, a lot. And I had this conversation yesterday with somebody. When you can extend the plays, that obviously, changes how you go about things. And so some quarterbacks need extra, people for spy. Sometimes you want to have zone where there's vision to go. And it's the second play usually that can be the most challenging. A first play may begin as a pass, and then as the second one begins, outside the pocket. And he has just had remarkable, success, with his arm and with his legs. And so, yeah, he is absolutely a threat. And
then with Jaden, how much have you seen just from the reverse, seeing teams to have to deal with him and just the hesitation that he causes and the big plays that result because of that?
Yeah, it's both things. I was pleased to see with Terry specifically on the deep ball that we had to him and remaining a passer, staying alive, and then absolutely throwing a dime on the run. Like that is, to me, like when the whole thing comes together. Because I think early in the season, John, that may have been one where he got outside the pocket and made somebody miss and gained some yards, but not 55 of them. So that kind of opens up in what we were looking for, and we had talked about it early in the season. So he's gaining that, and after, the first quarter or so of the season, where's the, things that we're finding our way about, and that's one of them.
On that play, specifically the long one to Terry, that's something that you drill, like a broken play, and
yes.
Go through. How do you practice, like, this play is broken, let's make something up?
Yeah, the best way is sometimes you may have a play twice in practice, and you don't want to let the offense, other players know that this might, be something to go, because then you can kind of, half-ass it on the first part of it to go. So it's way more authentic to get outside on this one, and now going to convert and go that. But the guys do work hard at that. And it takes work, but the best of the best can do that when those kind of explosive plays come. So, but best to not say it to anybody other than the quarterback.
How do you stop a guy like Derrick Henry? Like, how do you even prepare your guys to stop somebody like that?
Well, I think first off, you better have a really good tackling plan, and that's, what, part of his success through the years. Not only like sometimes you see a big back Nicky and you just think he's just going to run people over, and he has that part of his game, but he can also stiff arm. We've seen that. And he also has like a really good jab step. So when you're thinking, hey, I'm going to go take my shot on him, he puts a foot in the ground to make you miss. And so that's, to me, what makes, part of his superpower, the ability to have all three ways to stiff arm you, lower a shoulder, and then make you miss. Not all the time, but a lot of times the big guys may have, I'm going to run you over, stiff arm, and just play that powerful style. But when you put all, ingredients together, you better have a really good tackling plan. And against a player like that and any good running back, you want to make sure you're having as few one-man tackles as you can.
I mean, the stiff arm, like you said, as few one-man tackles as you can. Is that part of the strategy in defending him, is to avoid that stiff arm that he has?
Yeah, you have to work that technique just like any other, where you have to break a stiff arm down before you enter into the tackle. And but that is one of the things that he does, really well, is, so like going through the scout teams and going through the week and evaluating tape and how do you drill it. Is it the same as playing him live? Like, hell no. Like, there's no one that we have on our team that can simulate him for practice. Yeah, we could, so nobody. But to put it very bluntly, but you can work the technique, and that's what you have to do.
Do you consider Washington and Baltimore rivals?
For me, first, kind of getting here and getting started, I didn't naturally think of that coming in because of the division and the history of what the NFC East, has been so much with the teams that way. So that was probably the first thing I thought with rivalries with Washington of the NFC East. I think there's always a connection when cities are, closer by, but the fact that we're not in the same division and the same conference, for me, my first, time playing Baltimore as a Commander, my first thought was the East first.
Is that something that, like, you talk to the guys, or you feel like there's any extra energy in the building, or is it like it's?
I think it's awesome for the
normal?
fans, but not for the team. It's honestly just, it's not something that we play. You play them every 4 years, so it's not like every season, twice a year, where you just know each other so well. So I think it's really cool for the fans. It's close by, and but past that, for us, it's right back to it again.
Good afternoon, Coach.
Good afternoon.
Road game to Baltimore obviously isn't that far down the road for you guys, and until December, you guys actually don't travel even further than New Jersey. Is there a tangible advantage to that fact in the schedule?
I think there's, looking on it now, it was unusual, and I don't know how many road games I got to go on a bus, to the game. So that's a pretty good gig. We're not, flying from Dulles over to BWI. So going into that and having your time zones into the same spot for a while, I don't know if it's like an advantage, but it's certainly not a disadvantage. When you go on the road and coming back and getting your body clock back into order, that's a big deal. But it helps you on the next week. Sometimes those late nights, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. arrivals, make it more challenging.
And then looking at the Ravens defense, myself coming into it, thought that they blitzed more than they actually do, and said they opt to use kind of a mixture of different four-man rushes and down linemen. How much of a challenge does that present a young quarterback like Jaden?
Yeah, I think what you're probably referring to is like they've got a real identity, and they have for a long time, the way they've, played defense and selected players, and, from Ozzie all the way through Eric, and it's been really, really effective. What's happened more, through the last few years is probably more, you're seeing simulated pressures where sometimes it's four-man rush, looks like a blitz, and Baltimore and others, and ourselves included, incorporate some of that to show a blitz, but then play a coverage behind it. And I think as good as the offenses are, you're trying to find every advantage you can. But one thing that's been sure, Zach, he's on it, and as a first-time coordinator to, just there's a real standard about how they play defense. And not only has he upheld that, he lived it, so there's different, understanding of that, I would think from his point of view.
So much this week is going to get made about Lamar and Jaden. What, if any, are the kind of similarities you see in the two quarterbacks in this one?
I would say, if I had to pick one, that both of these two are elite competitors, like at the highest level. And that shows on the tape, the way they extend plays, the way they finish, the way they lead their group. So that's the part, if I was to make a comparison, it would be something intangible like that. Both of them have their own unique ways about them. But in this game, all these guys are fantastic competitors. And then, like in most profession, there's the elite, and these two guys are elite at it.
And then your linebackers. You've talked about how close you thought this defense was getting to the level of physicality you wanted. Specific to Luvu and Wagner, do you think they're getting there, and is that reflective of the whole team?
Yeah, I think, collectively as a defense, we're making progress. And you go through this process to make progress. And that is part of what the whole group is doing. And so at linebacker, defensive end, and this team, they're going to challenge us. No secret that Baltimore's got a good team, and they challenge you in lots of different ways. So I'm pleased with the progress that we're making. We're not, getting the ball and turning it over at the rate that we need to yet, but we're making progress. We're tackling better. I felt our speed more, and those are things that may not show up on the stat sheet, but for damn sure I know what that looks like, and I felt more of that.
I know for you it's another game in the schedule against Baltimore. For this area, it is not.
Right on.
They are losing their minds on both sides of this.
It's fantastic. I love it.
Right? You got young guys in your squad, social media members. How do you temper all of that, or do you have to at all?
I think what I try to do all the time, Chick, is really as often as we can, we try to make it about us and our improvement and just being absolutely obsessed with trying to get better and how do we play. And so going into the game, what are the things specifically we want to do better, and how do we go after it? And knowing that it does come down to us first, that's how we dig in right away, because there's so many things to do before we even get to the game. So like we got to get today great and throw a hell of a Wednesday, and then we'll get into tomorrow and all the process. But I do like the process for every day. Like today's about our competition, what we do. Tomorrow we talk about the ball. We did a big push on tackling today, breaking tackles. And in last game, we saw that trajectory going in the right way in terms of our times we were able to make somebody miss and how many tackles we missed. And so when that number goes in the ratio that we like, we're making progress. And so we got to continue to do that with the ball. So to be in the minus, for a game is not what we're looking for. So we got plenty of work to do, and but we just try to make it about this time. How do we get better? And then we'll take it into the next. And then by the time we get to the game day, man, we will absolutely let it rip, and it's going to be an awesome environment. But much to do before we get into that environment. So a lot of work to do before it's go time.
Hi, Dan. Before the season started, a lot of people felt like this Baltimore team, top 5 team in the league, maybe a Super Bowl contender. And with the way your team has started this season, do you view this game almost like a measuring stick game for your team?
No, we don't talk in that terms of measuring stick. Like, honestly, just you've heard us say, like, there's so many things for us to attack and get better at. So we're not, trying to use this game as a measuring stick. Like, hey, it's no secret. Baltimore's a really good football team, but we're not using it as a measuring stick of where we're at. Like, every time we go, like, we're here to get down and, like, go for it. And so it has no bearing on a measuring stick or any of that. We know how good they are, and, like, we're ready to go fight too. So, yeah, but not a measuring stick game for us.
Nationally, locally, they're billing us as a Jaden versus Lamar. If there was a marquee at that stadium, it'd probably be a Jaden picture and a Lamar picture. Do you want Jaden to kind of embrace that storyline in a sense?
Yeah, they're not playing against each other. Both of them would be great cornerbacks. There's no question about it. But, like, they're not playing against each other. Both of them are fantastic players and cause all sorts of problems for defensive coaches. But both of them would probably tell you they got to control what they can, and how well they can play and going to do that. So I respect the storyline for you, but at the end of it, man, like, he's got to absolutely, do his thing and playing the position. And that's what's really cool for us to see, the development at the position. Sometimes that doesn't show up on just a throw. It's checking into, a play against a blitz. It's, checking into a third down play on a screen to Austin to, convert. It's using your legs. And so playing the position and throwing it well, doing all that, like, that's where, the focus is for him. And I know he has great regard for Lamar, like a lot of us do. But, yeah, they're not playing against each other. And so they're playing, their groups against, their respective defenses. But they would both be good corners, I would say that. For sure.
Hey, Dan, more generally about Baltimore, as somebody who's been in this for a while, what impresses you about their organization and their ability to kind of year in, year out stay the same, be the same even when the personnel changes?
Yeah, that is it. And, like, the consistency sometimes doesn't sound like a sexy word, but it's really important, because they've shown remarkable consistency, as an organization. And so seeing how they do their business and how they do things, and they just always seem to be a team that's tough. They got a real identity about them and the way they play and compete. So, yeah, we've got a lot of regard for them as far as standards go. And, like, when we're talking about our own identity, I said it wasn't formed over 2 or 3 weeks. And so for these guys, you're talking about years. And it's really impressive to see from a coach on the other side of it.
Dan, you were asked before about the similarities between Jaden and Lamar. You might be sick of that question by now, but I'm curious from a technical standpoint how they might be different from what you've seen.
Could you go a little further, like technically?
A lot of comparisons about both being dynamic quarterbacks. What do you feel like they both do differently from one another from what you've seen so far?
Well, I would say,
What makes them unique is maybe a better way.
okay, yeah, that part's super easy to go. I would say the second play to begin for both of them, when they can get outside the pocket on a drop back pass, that, to me, both of them have, like, incredible traits to do that. So the same 50-play-yard pass that we saw from Jaden to Terry, we've seen that. Both of them had the same long runs in that same space. So is the coverage staying back? Are they coming up? both of them can process, things really quickly to get in the right play into the right spot. Offensive, they're both different, in the systems that they're in, but I thought both teams, really feature them on the things that they do best, and I think that's the name of the game. And so adding every year different weapons and how they feature guys into it, we got a lot of regard for them.
You talked about Lamar and Derrick Henry individually, but when you have to go against both of them, just in your career of game planning versus offenses, I mean, how many times have you had to face such a dynamic threat, and how do you prepare for that?
Yeah, it's for sure like a legit threat, and sometimes you may see it at two receivers, and sometimes it's this tight end and other players. And so when you have multiple players, and by the way, they got like some really good tight ends and Zay and some other guys as well. So like it's not a two-man show, and so you have to be really disciplined in the calls and have your eyes on the people to go. And even when you do that, it's still hard. So games like this comes down to tackling, ball hawking, and playing your style really well. Because if you just focus on one person, like all in the run game, like they'll rip you throwing it too. So you have to be really disciplined in your approach. But that's kind of part of the fun of being in the NFL, man. Like every week, how to go win the game may change. It may change some in the game. And I think the best of the best teams are able to adjust and do that. And so that's also a sign of a group that, hey, this didn't, they're playing us differently. We got to go in another way. And so from our offense, we've certainly seen that, and how do we have to change and go about it. And I've seen that growth from our group as well.
And just a super quick follow-up, if I could, about the defense, that just the last 2 weeks, their statistics have improved significantly. They've looked a lot better the last 2 weeks. You talk about the best defenses in the league. I mean, how do you feel about your defense being prepared for this matchup, specifically in terms of how they've improved the last few weeks?
Well, we knew we had, some things that we wanted to, get exactly right. And tackling was right up at the top of the list for me. The best teams that you see defensively, you hear them before you see them. And I think the communication, has certainly ramped up. So the tackling, the speed, the energy, the hitting, all of that, you put into a whole thing, and that's what causes, the really cool defenses. So we got a long way to go, but in terms of them playing together and knowing the energy that we're looking for, the physicality that we want, we're definitely taking steps. We're just getting warmed up, and we got a lot of work to do. But the energy, the toughness, their connection together, like those are real traits that are happening. All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good one.